Welcome to Storytelling Insights, art, science, and great conversations with storytelling insights from researchers, artists, teachers, and many more.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Calvin, and it's really great to be here. So I am a journaling and storytelling coach, and I love teaching about writing. Luckily, storytelling comes in a beautiful mix for people who want to connect with their audience. So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are looking to create their brand story and to be more authentic in the way that they share their story with their audience. And journaling is the best tool that they can use in order to explore and go deeper with that. I love teaching journaling for many purposes: business journaling, personal journaling. I work with teenagers, children, but also with adults, entrepreneurs, business leaders, to help them to understand the power of writing. You know, we live in this digital world where we are so connected all the time, but sometimes we forget to just go back to the basics and connect with pen and paper. And it can be so powerful.
Yeah. I saw that you have this kind of speciality, and it really caught my eye. This mindful journaling component of the storytelling, which of course I combine mindfulness and storytelling, so it really intrigued me. So why do you feel that helps with the storytelling? Are they the same? Are they different? Or what's the relationship between the journaling and the storytelling?
In my perspective, I see storytelling as a result of journaling. So basically, journaling is a process and a practice. We want to bring this activity into our daily life, into our routine, because it really helps us on so many levels. And there are so many benefits with journaling. You know, there are many leaders in the world who use journaling, but also just for our day-to-day well-being. And even if we just start with gratitude journaling, we will see how much of a difference it makes to our days and to our lives. And then just digging deeper and writing in our journal and really exploring a lot of things from our lives, from our memories, from our day-to-day experiences, then we can gather a lot of stories, because it really helps us to be more open, to open our eyes, to open our minds, and to be more connected to what is happening around us. And this way, we can pay more attention to the stories around us and to what is happening, and to explore a little bit better. And this way, we have that source of stories right there in our journal. And when we decide, okay, I need to use storytelling for my business, or I want to use storytelling for connecting with an audience through a presentation or through something written or spoken, then you can go back and refer to your journal, because there you have a lot of pieces of stories that you can connect together. And I think the practice of journaling really just helps us to be more authentic. And, you know, instead of just writing stories that are very surface level, we can just go a little bit deeper and have that connection in a deeper way with the people who are listening or reading our stories.
So authenticity really is the real name of the game here. So when people are doing this journaling, what is actually kind of happening for them? Like, what's the power? What's the real benefit for that? Or from that rather experience that gives them the depth. So you mentioned you can have like a superficial story, and people really don't really know how to show themselves. So what's really happening in that process? Are we exploring the storytelling mind, or are we going beyond the storytelling mind, or what's really going on there?
So I think the best way is to start by differentiating a diary and the journal, because, right, you know, as teenagers or children, we sometimes have diaries, and we write in a diary about what we did in school, or the person that we like in the classroom around the corner, or things like this, you know, and it's just narration of facts that we have throughout the day. Whereas in a journal, we go deeper. We start to connect our thoughts with our emotions. We become more accustomed to the vocabulary and the language of emotions. And this is how we go one level deeper. Now, a lot of people resist journaling just because they might confuse it with a diary, but it's very, very different. And this is what I mean by the surface level, because if we just refer to the facts and we just, tell something, a story in a chronological order, that's not really storytelling. That's literally just, I did this and this and this, and then I went to bed and that was my day. That's not really going deeper, neither with journaling or with storytelling. But when you actually write in a journal, then you have different tools. You have techniques or questions that can help you to navigate your emotions and to understand them. So, for instance, we can have journals for healing some negative emotions or memories from our past. So, for instance, there is something that triggers us, in the present. We get angry and then we start writing about it. And we realize that it's connected to something that has happened in the past. And we kind of start to see, okay, where did that come from? How is that impacting us? How can we make peace with that emotion? Mm-hmm. And then from that, we can actually see things in our present life in a different way and from a different perspective. And that in itself can be a journey that we can use in a story. So using storytelling in this way is, of course, also very vulnerable. It's authenticity, but it's also vulnerability. But then again, that is the type of storytelling that helps us to connect with the audience in a very different way, not just by telling them the facts, but also telling them the emotions behind the facts.
Yeah, so there is an element of processing, kind of like awareness, some growth that is happening in the process of journaling, which would you say they are moving sort of beyond the story to help better contextualize their own story, or are they sort of exploring their story but just looking at it from different sort of narration points?
Yes, they're exploring it. And there is science and there have been studies along the years showing that when we have an experience that we write about, and then we go back and we write about it several times, then after about 3 or 4 times, we start to write from the third person. We start to see things from different perspectives, and we kind of start to shift our way of looking at things. Maybe we first saw that we are the victims, and then we start looking at things, well, actually, from the other person's perspective, they were doing the right thing for themselves, and instead of feeling that we're the victims and the other person is the perpetrator, we might feel that, well, actually, from their perspective, it was kind of different. And we're not actually victims. That was just our perception of the things that happened. Right. And I think this type of story is the way that we take things with us, rather than, if we take the time to write them in the journal, to explore them in this way and process those feelings.
It's just reminding me, as you're speaking, of this kind of observer self in mindfulness that we talk about in mindfulness, and stepping out from who we think we are and connecting with some other observer element, some consciousness or awareness there. So journaling helps us in a way to, when you talked about just now, you mentioned sort of writing in the third person with time, and the research sort of shows that people evolve out of that in the story and almost watching the story. So that helps with the perspective shifting of the story. So is it that it's a narrative evolution then that happens for the storyteller?
There are really so many things happening when we write, also from the neuroscience perspective, but also the way that we start to process those feelings and bring them more to surface. Because, of course, in the first level of consciousness, we have that first emotion, that first trigger, and we bring that emotion to the surface, and it's like, okay, this is scary. I don't know where it's coming from. So we kind of need to go a little bit deeper, and instead of burying it down and say, well, I don't know, I can't deal with this right now, you kind of sit with it. And even if it's uncomfortable, you sit with it and you start writing. And for instance, this is something that I do when something comes up and it's really, really uncomfortable. And then I start writing. And it might be a page of my journal, or it might be 10 pages that I need to write about. And it's so uncomfortable. And it might give me a lot of uneasiness and anxiety. But at the same time, I know that at the end of the process, I will feel a lot better. So the way that our brain works as well is that it kind of starts to help through our amygdala, which is in our limbic system, that very small piece in our brain. And that amygdala is responsible for the intensity of our emotions. And again, it has been proven that with sustained with the sustained process of writing and session after session, our amygdala starts to ease in intensity. So basically, when we have that intense emotion that comes up to the surface into our conscious level, we have the amygdala going into fight, flight, or freeze. And it's like we're threatened. There's danger around us. But in fact, it's just the perceived threat in our mind. Right? It's the thought that comes with whatever we had from that experience that was unprocessed. And when we start writing about it, we start to see it from a different perspective. And therefore, the amygdala starts to slow down and starts to understand that actually we're not in danger. It's just something that, we have been programmed to believe that it's true, but in fact we're really in a safe space, and we're just with our journal and we're writing about it, and nothing is really threatening us. It's not a life or death situation. We don't need to fight. We don't need to run. And even if we are frozen, we can now be okay to move because it's safe. And this is what happens in the amygdala. And I think this is one of the most powerful ways in which we can understand that writing about something negative that has happened to us and that triggers that response and the intensity is the best way to use journaling for, especially because there's a lot of fear and anxiety that we store, and sometimes we're not ready to process it. And again, it's not a recipe. We don't know how people process things. Some of us might be okay after 1 or 2 writing sessions. Some of us might need 6 months to process some emotions. It's really just having the courage to stick with it, to go into this journey with the trust that, we will feel better at the end of it.
So that book, War and Peace, that may have been someone's journal.
Honestly, there are so many amazing journals out there that we really don't even see them as journals. Of course, we have the Diary of Anne Frank, which is the most famous journal. And to be honest, for me, that was also the heaviest one to read, because knowing that those things actually happened, it gives you another level of connection with the writing. But there are so many other books out there that are based on real feelings of the authors, and I think this is the beautiful part. I was actually writing in my book Write Your Way to Happiness about different authors who went through.
Write Your Way to Happiness. That's a book that you've got released. Is it available already? Is it?
Yes.
Oh.
It's released in 2018, and it's about the power of writing and how we can use writing for healing and for our daily well-being. It's more the theoretical part. And then I have the journal where people can actually practice what they read in the book. But going back to the book, I was writing there about different authors who were known to have mental health problems, and they were keeping journals. And then in their books, they would use different parts and aspects of themselves to create characters. So for instance, Virginia Woolf is one of them. There are small pieces of the author in each of the characters. And that's really, really something to think about next time when you read the book.
So is that part of the integration of these different aspects of ourselves, or how is that helpful for the storytelling? And is it helpful?
We all have different ways to express ourselves, and I think writers have this outlet of writing a book. So this is how they process their emotions. So they will put that into their books and their characters. There are artists who write songs, and they will put pieces of their sadness, their pain into their songs and into their music. There are people who paint, and they will put that into their paintings. There are very many ways in which people can express that. And no matter which way we use, it's the story that we share with the people, the parts of the stories that we choose to show to the people around us and to an audience, whether it's smaller or bigger, depending on where we are in our journey. But, it's the stories that we have lived. It's our experience, our side of the story that we share with other people in no matter what creative outlet we choose.
So there's no hiding, basically.
We can hide, but it's really not going to help us be true to ourselves. We will always feel that there's something heavy on us. At least this is from my experience as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And similar to you, kind of like the way I explore the story world and use them at work, there's kind of there is a strategic component at the end, what's your objective and of the communication and so on. But it sounds to me like you also have this holistic component. I mean, like last week, me and a good friend of mine, who's also my mindfulness teacher, Shamash Aladina, we ran a workshop on mindful storytelling, and it was about using the hero's journey for transformation. So it sounds to me like there is a component here where we're reconciling, in your work, our own story for ourselves first in our work, in our journaling, that is, in our self-work, if you like, before we start to then go out and use it in our business and with the world and so on. So is that really the real sort of the juicy part of the work that you like?
I think the keyword that you used and I really, really liked was reconcile, because that's exactly what happens. People want to feel at peace with their story at first. And I always encourage people that I work with to use parts of their stories that they are at peace with, because if there's something that you're still in pain about, it's something that still triggers you, then you will not be comfortable to use it in a story and to share it. So at first, you want to be okay with it. You want to use journaling for really understanding and processing whatever it is that you need to process. And then when you feel you let it go and you have distance, you are detached from it, then you can use it and you can see it as a beautiful gem that you want to share with the world, because you know that they will take something from it. They will learn something. They will feel inspired. So, there are so many brave people out there who maybe they go through a difficult health challenge, and then they heal and they feel so at peace with their story that they come onto a stage or they write a book or they just talk about their experience, because they know it will empower others and it will tell them that, look, it's possible to get over what you're going through. And I think this is one way to actually look at storytelling, as a piece of inspiration, as literally just saying, I was there where you are right now, and I went through the tunnel, I came on the other side, and I'm okay. And you will be able to do that too. And I think that's so beautiful, especially when you are first reconciled with your story and you know that it will be able to help at least one other person.
Yeah. So there's a big sort of healing component to the work that you're doing. And that's very fascinating, actually, because, I've been speaking to other people as part of this series, and the uses of the stories are just so phenomenal and so broad, which is why I was interested to have all these different perspectives in the first place. I was speaking to someone who runs an organization called Narrative Infrastructure, and what that does is it records stories with physical locations. I spoke to a BBC journalist who talks about why stories really hit home, and it doesn't matter what you're talking about. If you wrap it in a story, it will resonate with people. So if people are using stories, or as we know, they can be used for so many reasons, right? They can be used to pass down information from generation to generation. They can be used to heal, as in the work that you're talking about. They can be used for all kinds of things. What do you think about the various uses of the stories? And do you see any limitations in the way they're used? It could be in your work, or it could be broader. I mean, this is quite just a general, wide open question. Do you see stories having limits to helping us as a human race to advance?
I think the only limit is when the storyteller is not ready to be vulnerable. And I see this with a lot of people that I work with. So in terms of the storytelling approach that I do, I work with entrepreneurs who want to use their work as inspirational, or who want to either bring a new service or a new product into the world, and they want to speak about this new brand in a way that, it shows that it helped them at first, and this is what they went through, this is how it helped them, and this is where they are right now, and they want to share it with the world. So it's more of a social component to it as well, but it comes from the perspective of their personal story. However, very many times I speak with entrepreneurs who are there, and they say, yes, I want to use the story for my personal brand, for marketing, for social media, for selling, but they're not ready to be fully vulnerable. And I always share with them, the questions and the process of going through journaling and going through this healing part at first, so that they can go deeper. And, it's all about in the way that how comfortable they are. Of course, we can't force someone to share their story if they're not ready to, but they start seeing the impact when they share, even if it's just, one small part about their personal life. Maybe, they're used to just talking about business, and then one day they write something about their dogs. And they see the impact that people resonate so much more with the story about their dogs rather than everything else that they shared about business and products and so on, because people need that. We people buy from people. We don't want to just buy from an entity out there, from a corporation. We interact a lot better when we actually understand the story behind the product, behind the brand. And then again, it's this whole piece. I think Maya Angelou had this beautiful quote saying that people will not remember what you did or what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. So I always try to remember to remind people that I work with that don't worry if you mess it up. Don't worry if your words are not the perfect ones that you use in your story. Don't worry that your storytelling is not perfect in the way that you think it is, but think about the emotion that you put in your story. And if you have the courage to be vulnerable, then people will connect with that. People will feel that emotion. And I think this is the best way to understand that there are no limits in the way that you can work and connect with your audience and bridge that gap, unless you are putting that limit. In this digital world now, even more so that we're doing a lot of work online and we're separated by a screen. And, people just feel that they're divided by screens everywhere. Whether you're looking on your phone or you're like this, connected on a call and you see just the screen, it's literally about going into that bridge and seeing, okay, can I share stories that will make you resonate? Can I get closer and create that connection if it's not in person? Because when you're in person, you can have that exchange of energy. Yeah. And it's the same, as a brand, as an entrepreneur, or as a brand who wants to create those stories. You want to feel that people are reading, like you are there speaking with them specifically, not with a group of people, but with them as a person. Because when you are actually reading a post or a website, you are reading by yourself. And, it's not like you want to hear something generic. No, you want to feel that that brand is talking to you to bridge that gap.
Yeah, there's a lot of richness here in the work that you're doing. And really, you're using storytelling as a way to help people heal and be more vulnerable, which is quite fascinating work, and sort of like underneath the entrepreneurship and the selling. there is a lot of sort of holistic work going on as well. Is there any sort of, future use of stories that you foresee or would like to see? I'm just thinking about, we see them everywhere, don't we? The mind is always in story, and if it's not Netflix or a Prime Video or whatever entertainment stories there might be. Do you think we should see more or less of any particular type of stories going forward, and why?
I do believe that we need more vulnerable stories. I do believe that, aside from the fictional stories that we see created, which again, I always feel that there is a piece of the creator in each of those fictional stories. There is someone behind that story who either wrote it or directed it, or who took a photo and they wanted to put a piece of themselves in there. But it's about the level of depth that we want to see in the stories. And I think people are becoming more and more vulnerable. And, even on social media, we start to see people writing more about personal things. They start to be a little bit more open. Not everyone, of course, because I feel that there's the inner work that has to be done first, whether through journaling or any other way that they choose to do. But there's still that way of getting over the thought of what will others think of me. There's that concern of being judged, of being labeled in a way, and then people just stop and they stop sharing. So I think it's about really being vulnerable. And I would really like to see more of those authentic stories. And I would really like to see more people being more open. And, instead of going into corporate presentations and seeing slides with numbers and graphics, I would really like to see more of the stories behind that, and really being those that data being wrapped in a story, because it will definitely make a better impact. Science says that we remember stories 20 times better than facts alone. So we need to have that connection with a story to actually understand, because after we look at numbers, we will forget them. There's nothing really emotional there to connect us. But when we see numbers and then we tie them up with a story, just like you were saying in journalism, we will remember that. We will resonate with that better. And that's something that I think in the future we will see more and more, because it all comes down to people doing the inner work. And I would like to be optimistic and think that people are starting to do the inner work.
One final question is, what do you think the best use of the story is?
I think from the perspective of the storyteller, I would like to see them feeling that they left something behind, that it's their legacy. And then from the perspective of the receiver, whether it's reading or listening to stories, I would like them to feel inspired. I think it's this dynamic between people of offering and receiving and having this exchange of stories that will help them feel that they contributed and they left something behind, and then the other person felt inspired, because this will cause a ripple effect. And the other person in turn will share something with someone else, because they felt inspired, and they will share something personal, something vulnerable. They will pass it along. And I think this is the type of dynamics and the type of ripple effect that I would like to see of giving and receiving, because this will create a bigger connection and a lot more emotional authenticity.
Oh, before you go, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to my channel. It means a lot more than you know. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye for now.